Hi, everyone. I'm Erin Sweeney, Global Director of Creative Excellence at VMLY&R. And today I'm sitting with Beth Ann Kaminkow, Global CEO of VMLY&R Commerce and CEO of VMLY&R New York, to collect insights from inside the Cannes 2022 Creative Commerce Jury Room. Thank you for joining us, Beth Ann.
Thanks for having me, Erin. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. And for those that don't know, we're lucky to be sitting with not only a 2022 Cannes jury president, but she was also the inaugural president for the creative commerce category. So excited to get this started. So let's dive right in. So, how did your jury define what winning works like in the creative commerce lions?
So, first, to your point of being the first inaugural jury president, I have to start by saying that Manuel Bourdet, who many of you may know too, we really helped influence the naming of this category, the understanding of what went into the category, and the definitions and subcategories around it. So it really was a chance to expand beyond just what was thought of before as e-commerce, which was how commerce even got on the map to begin with. But if you think about e-commerce, it's very focused just on digital and almost single channel commerce. And so this was a chance to really open up and think about the canvas of creativity that is now exploding across so many different types of channels, all working sometimes in a unified or unison way to create an incredible experience for a brand. So for us, it really was about that amplification of what does it mean when commerce starts to intersect or collide with creativity, to allow channels that before were largely transactional still are transacting, but you're transacting in a way that's building kind of brand equity, consumer engagement, bigger experiences, and ultimately driving through to conversion.
Absolutely. And I have to say, coming from the commerce family, it was so cool to see this category just come to life and all the press and everything between Manuel or Lindsay's team as well. And we hope to see this category come to life in other award shows too. But sticking to Cannes, so what trends did you identify from the work you saw in the creative commerce room?
I would say that a lot of the trends were probably similar to some of the other categories. So you see, in general, creative getting much more expansive in how it's being expressed and what the attention it's being turned to. I think, which is one of the reasons why WPP won creative agency across all of Cannes as a network, because of this idea of what does it mean to transform based on creativity or have creative transformation taking place in our world today. So you saw a lot of emphasis on solving not just consumer pain points, which our category saw a lot of, but also world challenges, world problems. What were some of the biggest things that brands and corporates could take on to have a real impact and guide and shape the future of the world? So I think that's super exciting, and it takes kind of the idea of purposeful work to a whole nother level. I think the other is understanding the consumer journey and finding ways to insert kind of creativity all along that journey in really, again, influential and impactful ways for the consumer that are addressing kind of friction or pain points or things that creativity is uniquely suited because of the insight behind understanding what the consumer is going through to address some of those opportunities. Of course, there's a ton when it comes to platforms being used differently, the technology and mechanics of that is the utility of certain platforms or certain technology today being leveraged in new, really exciting, transformational ways. You really, if you focus on kind of consumers, they in a way really lead us to what is mattering more in their lives. How are they living their lives differently? What are the tools and new opportunities to leverage the way they're living life and the way they're experiencing brands to get the most out of creativity today, I think. And then the last one I would say is certainly, and I'm sure you're hearing this from everybody, things like the metaverse, but I would say in fad-oriented ways and more about what are the trends that we're beginning to see come out of these dimensional spaces, this blurring of physical and virtual lives, and even who we are as human beings across those platforms and those spaces are being addressed more. So I thought that was all super interesting to start to see.
Yes, commerce is growing and growing fast, that's for sure. Metaverse now, Web3, I mean, it's never ending. But so, what do you wish you saw more of in terms of the creative commerce work? And maybe what did you wish you saw a little bit less of in the jury room?
I mean, I would say in terms of what I would love to see more of, I think it would be continuing down that road of like understanding how payments is being disruptive in new ways. And there's new, all kinds of hands-free type payment opportunities, I think, to like leverage differently. We had a great idea in Jersey Pay that started to get there in terms of a wearable, but I think there's so much more that can start to happen in that space. I think that understanding the application of technology, but in super creative ways, that's not just about tech, but is like really about the data driven outcomes of applying technology to solve creative challenges. I think especially in commerce, there's like wide open spaces for that. When I think of the space of direct to consumer and what brands can start to do direct to consumer, a lot of what we saw was still across either retailers, which quite honestly, I'll come back to that because we probably could have seen more of that too, but we're more about a third party or kind of a retail based selling, or it was by a retailer themselves. But I do think that there's a lot more that can be done in terms of that, direct to consumer opportunity driving conversion. And then I'll come back to that last point, which is, even retailers where we join forces with retail, which was sort of the traditional shopper marketing. I think using creative commerce to disrupt traditional shopper marketing, we could see so much more in terms of getting like the Coca-Colas of this world together with Walmart or Walmart Plus, even Amazon. There was like very few cases that integrated on an Amazon platform or storefront. So I think that even when you look at some of the what we consider to be more traditional retail spaces, there's so much more that can be done there as well.
Interesting, super interesting. And
so in terms of like less, I'll come back to that too. I was pretty thrilled with what we saw. I do think people were trying to understand what was different about creative commerce. So we did see a lot of submissions in our space that were across other categories too, that at the end of the day, they wouldn't have met our definition of creative commerce. So it might have happened in a retailer, or it may have had commerce as like a happy return on investment or KPI as part of the entire kind of creative expression, but commerce as an idea wasn't at the heart of it, or it wasn't like commerce-led thinking, where it was about driving conversion. So we saw a bunch of that, and then we saw other interesting ideas too. That the KPI was around media. It was a commerce-led idea, but it was really about garnering media or the pass-along, shareable impact of the work, and less about actually driving a lot of sales and conversion. And at the end of the day, we're also looking for really strong commerce results in terms of really driving that transaction.
I have to say, this is a common insight across a lot of these interviews, is that a lot of jurors were seeing, like, if it was social or media, like you said, it wasn't the core of the idea. Like, it has to be perfectly fitting for like that category, that home. And another thing we've been hearing is there's a bit of a blurry line between direct and creative commerce, which I know we've talked about a few times too. So sorting through those waters as well. But let's focus on, or unless you want to elaborate on that.
I was just going to say, I mean, I was more concerned about that going into the awards. I think when we were in the jury room together, and then when I look at the outcomes, it was less overlapping and less blurry than I thought. And I think it's really that distinction of like truly kind of something that is about a direct response type of creative approach versus something that really is about the path to purchase or understanding kind of the journey to buying brands.
Okay, good to know. And so let's turn our focus to the Grand Prix. So why do you think Thigh-Stop ended up being the Grand Prix winner in the creative commerce category?
Well, I will tell you, it was one of those ideas that just kept rising to the top of our room in the conversations, in the entertainment value, which for us at the end of the day, we're very aware that a lot of the award Grand Prix winners are going to be like very heavy, weighty ideas, leaning on your heart strings, and very much of a save the world kind of a sentiment sometimes. And for our category in particular, we were really okay, like saying this is about commercial outputs. This is about something that can have true entertainment value at the heart of it. And we really wanted to make that point that as you get more commercial doesn't mean that you're letting go of really highly creative ideas and the ability to move so quickly and execute across every touch point so beautifully for an idea like this to come to life and come to life with the bigness around it that it had. I think for us, it was truly, commercial and commerce in every way, from the original pain point being about solving this massive business issue with the supply chain crisis and their number one ingredient for their entire menu, not being in short supply or maybe even not having access to it, like what would happen to their entire business. And their business is one that is franchised. So there's so many people that this impacts in their livelihood and their own individual businesses. So just the way that the idea came to life, and we just felt like sent a really strong message and example for years to come of what the creative commerce space could be all about. And this whole mashup and of an integration of what is physical and digital experiences as well was a big one for us.
Yeah, I think it was a big business problem and then simple solution, but like quick thinking and innovative. And then the real time component was pretty unreal. I just rewatched the case study and it also entertaining. Commerce can be entertaining, and the Rick Ross content and having that as well was a really fun variable to have in the storyline.
Well, it was interesting insight for me because again, my first time as a jury president or in the Cannes jury rooms, and one of the big insights was you watch that if you're lucky, you're going to watch the video over and over and over again. So the clients that had videos that we wanted to see multiple times, we could never get enough of. That really helps as well. So it's a little bit of a hint to, I think, creating something that's going to be, have winning potential for it. So definitely it was, and we use the word brave as well. We have our own brave process, but we also felt like the work was very brave for even the brand. I mean, basically you turned your brand into something else overnight. And I think that, it was very clear what the brand was, but that was very brave for them as well.
Yeah, that's definitely a risk factor there, but it worked in their favor. So outside of Thigh Stop, did you have a favorite piece of work in the creative commerce category?
Well, I mean, I did love all of our work, I have to say, and I wasn't allowed to say that as loudly and proudly in the room because I had to kind of leave during those moments. But I do think the Smart Fill, Jersey Pay, Oreo, I mean, there were so many that I thought even when, to use Manuel's language, it was sometimes a tactic that became a much bigger, clever idea. And it showed that things as simple as sampling and trial and things like that could be done in all new disruptive ways. I still think had a lot of impact. But for me personally, one of my favorites was IKEA's Stuck in the 90s. So if you haven't seen that yet, I won't go into all the details right now, but go watch it. Also incredibly entertaining video. I thought it was just a really clever use of live streaming, which brings me to another area that again wasn't covered as much as I would have thought. Interesting live streaming and social commerce activations were not really there. And I think part of that is because oftentimes they really are a one-off or used very tactically, that kind of influencer marketing into the commerce space. And I think that's wide open territory. And what the Stuck in the 90s campaign for IKEA did was really up level it to a much bigger idea and an elongated activation and campaign idea through these television shows, these kind of like reality-esque television shows. So definitely recommend people to go watch that. But it was a real kind of insight-driven learning one for me as well.
Oh, it's awesome. And I bias towards our own, of course, too. And I think what's interesting from Smart Fill or Jersey Pay, they're both making a difference. It's not just driving conversion. Jersey Pay is protecting the people making the transaction, so they're not getting their wallets stolen or putting them at harm. And then clearly Smart Fill is, environmentally friendly as well. And so it's going towards those sustainable goals, which is if commerce can tap into all of that, it's huge for us.
Totally. It's definitely bettering the way we can do things. It's adding value to the consumer and to the brand at the same time. I love that.
Me too. So how would you like to see the work in the category evolve next year?
Well, I think some of the things that I mentioned that we didn't see reflected a lot in some of the submissions, I think would be part of it. I do think it's a chance to continue to redefine the kind of creativity that we see and the application of creativity closer into things that are commerce driven and commerce channels and spaces. I think, getting courageous and really kind of disrupting the way we've been doing things and recognizing that there are new ways that we can add value to consumer, I think is super exciting. I think that people should look beyond, the work that they've been inspired by to really, because you see a lot of work that's been, or, derivative or, even an better version of something that you've seen before, but it looks familiar. And so I think that's the other thing is it's so hard. I think creatively, I can't imagine the pressure on creative sometimes, or even, full collective teams to continue to kind of imagine the future and go where people haven't gone before. But I think that would continue to be my push. And especially because these channels are new, I think the commerce space offers huge opportunity to take your thinking and take your creative ideas into new channels and into new spaces.
Sure. And I think that kind of ties into our next question is if you had a piece of advice for those who were trying to win a Creative Commerce Lion, what would that be?
So I think one is really recognizing what is happening in commerce today by your own personal behaviors, by looking around you at next generation and how their shopping has evolved, by not being afraid of the physical space and physical stores or the way people physically sell. Like some of the great ideas that we've seen in other categories too come from understanding every merchant out there in the world, and kind of thinking about how do we solve for them as well and make more possible for commercial outcomes in their lives. So I mean, like every sector, banking, health, auto, like every single sector, of course, the consumer packaged goods space has so much opportunity in the space that's just so untapped right now. And then the other, in terms of like how the work shows that I really recognize how important it is the case films and is really understanding how you're being evaluated. And some of that is not like what you've already accomplished, but it's like how you package for winning. And I think that's almost as important sometimes as really great work is doing justice to that work in your submission and anticipating what people are going to be wanting to understand in the room, how they're going to be evaluating the things that they're going to be asking, really looking for to make you not just shortlisted, but from shortlist up into the medal positions. And then how that case film does engage, is beyond cliche, does things that are different, really tells the story and the narrative of what the creative element of the case is, like in the most celebrated, most interesting and engaging way. So those are things that I just never really, I think, had full appreciation for. But when you're in that room and you get down to these like final 10, or 5 pieces of work and you want to be the one to stand out, it just is remarkable how important those pieces are.
You can probably see my smile getting bigger. You make an awards girl. Very happy with that answer. It's definitely a crucial part. It's part of the strategy and just really catering it again to that category, to that home, and answering all of the questions because they are checking it off in that room for sure.
I love that about VMLY&R, to be honest. I learned so much through Debbie's approach and what she's done with the creative teams and Lauren. And I love the fact that, we have creatives that are contributing at the very last couple months on a piece of work they may have had nothing to do with, but they're also helping to get that work over the line and get the attention that it deserves. And then they're all sharing in the kind of the celebration and recognition when it gets the awards that it deserves. So I think it's an incredible bonding experience for the agency and one that I think really sets VMLY&R apart.
Yeah, I do too. It's definitely this really fun feeling of having a true team at VMLY&R.
Yeah.
And that being said, so obviously at VMLY&R and within our network, we have VMLY&R Commerce. But why do you think it's important for VMLY&R to be recognized as award-winning within the creative commerce category?
Well, I would say it probably goes for all of the categories, but certainly I think having kind of commerce as a distinct area of expertise, as the commerce agenda starts to be more important for clients today. It is, it was somewhat sometimes isolated in either sales or shopper marketing or within other disciplines, where it's now with digital transformation, what's happening with media right now, it's really moving into the marketing mix in a much bigger, much more significant way, with a different kind of budget requirement and the true driver of growth for the business as part of the marketing mix. So I think having it be an area of expertise that we're well known for, and that Cannes Lions then celebrates even more and gives us even more exposure around, is a very important way of building our own profile and getting the credit for all the great thinking and work that we do across BX, CX, and commerce. And certainly is a way of not just building and growing connected brands, but driving that conversion and moving markets around connected brands.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And last but not least, what tips and tricks did you learn that could be used for our future success?
Tips and tricks. Well, there aren't too many tricks. And I'll leave that to the real experts like yourself and Lauren and Debbie and Manuel and others. But I would say, the biggest thing is just recognizing how important Cannes is as a business driver, and how early in the year you need to start working those trusted relationships with clients to build the sort of groundswell of support and client adoption and buy-in that you need to get really great work out there. It's absolutely about partnerships, and it takes the entire agency, every single role, but also takes the client relationship. And if I wasn't convinced before, I'm definitely convinced now. So I think that's such an important thing that we can all do for each other, is build those client partnerships where clients recognize what great work does to their bottom line.
It's been really great to hear these insights from a duo CEO, that's for sure. They're a little different from the creatives, but it's amazing. And it's been a pleasure to interview you, Beth Ann. And thank you for your time, and thank you for representing VMLY&R at Cannes this year.
Thank you guys for the opportunity.
And then for those tuning in, thank you. And please be sure to check out all of our insight interviews on our Creative Excellence YouTube channel. And that's a wrap. Have a great day. Thanks, Beth Ann.
Bye-bye.